Good evening and welcome to the Standards of Geekness podcast, episode 5. Welcome to Studs, Duds, and so much more.
Hey, we're skipping over number four. Doubled up on three. We're skipping over four. Now we're on five.
No, last week was supposed to be number 4. I just was too lazy to change the title.
Oh, okay. As long as
Yeah.
we got that out in the open.
Hey, when you're a dad to a toddler and all your energy goes there, sometimes the brain forgets things.
That's okay. I live with a toddler anyway, but I look in the mirror and see him. He's got a full beard. So I don't know how I deal anyway. How you doing, Evan?
I'm doing good. This last week in wrestling has been very, very interesting. There's not a lot of news in the way of things outside of Jordan Grace. It's confirmed that she has signed a WWE deal, wrapping up with TNA recently. I think it was a foregone conclusion, but yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a few of those now. I think that are kind of foregone conclusions. I think you had the call right on the Hardy Boys. I think they're going to be making their way over officially to WWE here in the near future. I I'm interested. Do you think Dolph's going to come back?
and it would not shock me if he was a surprise entrant in the Rumble. There's going to be, I think, a few of the TNA guys that are there. It's funny. Last week I predicted that potential John Cena challenging Joe Hendry to a match.
Hmm.
It popped up as a podcast take for a lot of people all of a sudden this week. So I just want to, take credit for that and be the first one to say that I put it out there. Uh,
I'll give you credit for it, man. You came up with that on air, like while
yeah,
we were talking,
we did not
like
talk about
or
that ahead
that
of
was
time.
organic about, and that was, and I give you your flowers that day. I'll do it again right now. That was a brilliant idea.
Yeah,
It's something I'd like to see. Something I hope we do see.
it was really interesting to hear people's takes on it and about how like people are like, no, this makes logical sense, and like it would also WWE could acknowledge it being they've acknowledged world champions from TNA before the women's champion. They could acknowledge it as an official world championship. It might not be a WWE championship, but it still fits the bill. Yeah, just it's exciting to watch wrestling as it's grown. I mean, AEW is looking at joining Amazon as another streaming option, which would bring them to an even larger number of households across the world. Honestly, Amazon's the number one company in the world outside of Walmart, probably at this point in terms of growth. Globally, it's the number one company. I have my own mixed appealing feelings on Amazon, but yeah, I gotta say, I'm excited to see where AEW is growing. You and I've talked a little bit this week about like what we've liked and what we haven't liked in wrestling lately, and there's been a lot wrong in AEW that we've kind of shit on them a lot, and there have been bright spots. Um, I want to try to highlight that a little more, not just sound negative about them all the time. Tony, I still think you're trying to play with action figures or running it as an e-fed, but call me if you need help.
We talked a little bit about that before we got in the air here. In terms of the AEW, and I said it out there. I'll say it on the air. I think one of the big problems with AEW lately has just been inconsistency in selling. And what I mean by that is like there are a lot of high spots that chain into high spot in AEW style matches, and because the sell isn't being taken in those times where it is being taken in times where it's just like more of a transitional move, it's it's taking a lot of the oomph away from those power moves, those high spots. It's making them less impactful as an overall. Not just because, in my opinion, the product is oversaturated with high spots in every match, but
Well, and everyone's
because
doing a
you're not there's no time to absorb it.
yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think selling, honestly, inconsistency is probably their biggest problem overall, not just within selling, but like booking, selling, branding. There's been a lot of moving parts. I don't think Tony's ran it as efficiently as he could have. I want AEW to succeed and thrive. I think there's a lot they could fix and a lot they can improve upon. But yes, the selling, like to me, like it's the psychology involved with a power move, it should be devastating. It should be felt. It should be, ultimately like you should feel it at home emotionally, physically. Like you should be having some type of reaction. And honestly, the best analogy I can think of is they treat high spots like chain wrestling. Like
Hmm.
old school Benoit versus Angle or Angle versus Eddie, like a lot of chain wrestling. They treat their high spots like that, and where they're low in mid spots, where it's like punches and kicks, they're selling more for those than they are for the high spots, which is kind of backwards and makes them kind of look like idiots.
Well, and I don't understand it because normally you'll have uh, some of your more seasoned wrestlers working in production in the back who are helping put these matches together. Maybe not every move, but at least getting a good idea of the feel of the match, the story the match is trying to tell, so that you're not trying to tell the same match in another or the same story in another match on the card. If
Yeah,
every match you're working the arm, it gets pretty boring. So,
yeah.
but
But yeah, I mean, for a low news week, we have seen some drama in other aspects of the wrestling world. There's been stuff going on with RVD and some indie promoters. I'm not going to delve into that. You can go find all the videos on YouTube. Um, Basically, there's been some indie promoters not paying people for the work they're doing. If you hire someone, pay them. Uh, I'm not going to go into that because I know you've got a lot of relationships across the indie
I
world,
got
and
I got some personal feelings on that one.
it
It's
it's close to home for you.
probably better if we just skip
Yeah,
over that and
yeah.
move on
There's
to the next one.
we
We
can
got
talk about
plenty to
that
talk
another
about.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So studs and duds. So a new format with how we're gonna do what we're liking and what we're not liking within both WWE and AEW, and stuff happens in TNA that we feel like highlighting, etc. Um, I think with studs, obviously it's like, oh, I love that. Duds, obviously, is like, ooh, not the good kind of duds. If you like eating milk duds, kind of more like the drizzling shits, to quote Bully Ray. For me, the first one, honestly, Jey Uso and Gunther really ramped up their promo work leading into Saturday Night Main Event. I was pleasantly surprised with how they were able to dial into, you know, the crowd. Jay was playing off of them. Um, I was rather disappointed with Saturday Night Main Event overall, but their match at Saturday Night Main Event was actually pretty good. I do think we've kind of booked ourselves a little bit into a corner when it comes to Jay's booking. That said, Gunther continues to be a menace, both on the mic and in the ring. It'll be really interesting to see who they eventually build up to beat him. But yeah, I think we've put ourselves in a corner where Jay either needs to win this or move on away from the main event scene.
I agree with you. Jey Uso has kind of been booked into a corner. I have an idea of where to go with him to kind of fix this, but unfortunately, uh, we're gonna have to give it a few months to get there. I
Yeah,
really think that Jey Uso is in a position where I would I would give him the Money in the Bank briefcase.
I
I
do think
think
that that's
that
viable, a lot more viable now than a few
um
months ago when you talked about it.
yeah, Jey Uso is a he's an interesting take because like especially when you talk about like the Money in the Bank briefcase, you're normally talking about like a heel
Mhm.
holding on to
Well,
that and cashing it out in an opportunistic moment. There have been babyface um, Money in the
Cassius.
Bank holders and cash-ins,
Well,
but they're typically done with more honor. And Jey Uso could be one of those that does it kind of honorably, but also shows up on the spot and is like, "Bam! I'm cashing in. I'm taking it now." He
yeah,
does have that neat streak that we've seen in like the bloodline and stuff, and so I think that would be probably the best way to progress Jey Uso and get him out of the funk that he's in.
yeah.
Unfortunately, for the moment, I think we're gonna have to ride this out a little bit longer.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And who's to say? I mean, the briefcase itself could be an opportunity to turn him heel as a solo artist.
Hmm.
Like, this whole losing streak in big moments could lead to, that, you know, I thought I had the fans behind me. Well, the company didn't see it that way. It's your fault while I'm not the champion. So I'm going to cash in on your favorite. Come here, Cody. There's a lot of opportunities there.
I got a hot take. I'm gonna come up. I'm gonna give you here because my opinion on something has changed since we talked last week. Um, and I'll just get to it right now. We talk about our highlights for the week. One of mine is Kevin Owens. Kevin
He's
Owens, the work that KO has been doing has been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I'd give him an Oscar just for the T-shirts he's been
Dude.
popping up
The,
with
the
everything.
the t-shirts are on another level. The Cody sucks eggs is a nod to the Funks. I I about I legit popped when I saw that. Him mocking Matthew McConaughey. Like my favorite thing, honestly, and a lot of people, I don't know if they picked up on it, was he kind of has slowly become what he detested in Roman Reigns. That promo that Sammy was cutting, it seemed like KO was teasing maybe Sammy should screw Cody over to get that WrestleMania main event with him. There's some emotional
Well,
manipulation going on.
so I'm gonna pause you right there for a second. And just like I want you to look over here at this other conversation that we've been having for the last couple weeks, in regards to his lordship, The Rock. What it's high super chief, high mega monster chief,
Super Saiyan Tribal Chief.
Rocky, yeah, something like that. Um, so we don't know what's going on with him, and I really think that it really feels like right there around the time of the Netflix premiere, some more wrenches were kind of thrown into the works, kind of like last year when he came back right after the Royal Rumble. Um, it felt a little bit off, and it kind of seems like maybe some new plans were put into place, and we might be changing direction just a little bit now. And I bold prediction here. Here it is. Hot take. I think KO might just beat Cody Rhodes at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
the promo work
it
Cody's been
actually makes a more interesting story.
it does make a more compelling story. And honestly, taking the belt off of Cody at this point, I think is a fine choice. A couple months ago, I might have been like, I don't know about that. But honestly, his reign up until now has really been kind of lackluster. He's had some solid matches, obviously, and his promo work is still good, but there just hasn't been the bad guy to bring out this Cody we're getting now that KO is bringing out of him. I think perfect opportunity. Have KO beat him at the Rumble. Cody could then win the belt back at Mania.
Well, the money with Cody is always in the chase.
Well,
Like, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that he's held the belt for a good length of time because it needed to have that still decent reign right after Romans. Like, you
yeah,
couldn't flip it 2 months. Like that was never going to happen.
yeah.
But it's been, 3/4 of a year now, and Cody can drop it to Rome or to KO. And what I think is great about this is like we've kind of been talking about that, like, and Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre, and now you can add Sami Zayn
The
into that
crash out crew,
mix.
man. Well, and the thing is if KO picks it up, it doesn't have to be Cody he faces. It could be Sammy.
Imagine
It could be John
I,
Cena.
I and I got another weird one for you. Imagine this. What is another couple of people that you could add into this mix to make it real interesting? What about carrying Cross?
Uh, I so You and I have talked a little bit about this, but here's a hot take that I think we're gonna get. I think at WrestleMania we're gonna get Karrion Kross versus Seth freaking Rollins. I think it'll lead to Seth eventually turning heel again. He's been a far more entertaining heel than he has been as a babyface. Um, I think Karrion's the right person to bring that out of him, and that's kind of been Karrion's mo this whole time. Is he brings the
Hmm.
real them out of them, and you know the Wyatt Six stuff aside, which I'm honestly a little disappointed with how they've handled the Wyatt Six in general. I don't know what's going on there. Obviously, there's a lot of emotional stuff involved there. I think Karrion Kross and Seth Rollins make a perfect night one feud. You could build it from Rumble until Mania. Doesn't have to be too long. It could be perfect.
Seth Rollins is definitely a guy who I think is getting almost lost in the mix a little
He got
bit
lost in the
with.
mix last year. Like if you think about it, outside of him being pushed into that tag team event and like dropping, and he was world champion,
Mhm.
but he felt like an afterthought. And I don't think
Well,
that was necessarily by design.
doesn't Gunther feel like a little bit of an afterthought compared to
I've
Cody?
been saying that for months. You know that. Like the moment for me that it clicked where I was kind of losing interest in Gunther was when I was attending that Raw live in Grand Rapids when Damian Priest comes out, cuts a promo on him, and embarrasses him and like makes him stumble over his words and makes him look scared and questions himself. Nobody's ever made Gunther question himself outside of Cody. And I've noticed this trend where more and more he's questioning himself. He's lost his mystique, and I think they're trying to give it back to him, but I think it's too late. I think they need to pivot the belt away from him too. I don't think he's a long-term world
But
champion.
I agree. Gunther needs to lose the title, but Gunther can't. In order
Can't beat
to
anyone.
salvage what you have left of Gunther, it needs to be taken off in a gimmick of some
Triple
kind.
threat gimmick.
Yeah.
Have him do an injury angle where he's injured and can't compete. That could work too.
Mm, no, because you want him to be strong. That's the whole premise is Gunther has to be strong.
Well,
So,
better start adding
I think that it's
getting
no, I think it's a great opportunity to have a chicken shit heel in a triple threat match who like pins the other. Well, Gunther hits some big move, chicken shit heel, quick smack, then gets the pin and becomes the new champion. Right?
Well, that's why I think
Doesn't pin
Dominic
Gunther, pins
Mysterio
the other
is
guy.
that.
Dominic would be a great one for this. Absolutely. And the whole thing here is this is the opportunity to turn Gunther babyface. And I think that's what he really needs now. I think we've seen I
Yeah,
mean, I don't get me wrong, I like heel Gunther, but we've seen it and we've seen it for a long time now.
this is
Every wrestler needs a facelift every once in a while. So
and when it'll refresh him. I mean, hell, you could have Ludwig Kaiser turn on him and set up a feud there. Like, there's a lot of opportunities you can do this with. It's just I don't know the world title scene right now, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the shifting parts with The Rock or if it's just like inconsistency with booking. Triple H isn't perfect. We've called him out here. Vince was never perfect. We've called him out. Tony obviously not perfect. But I don't think they've done Gunther a service when it comes to his title reign. I think they put the belt on him too soon. I think they should have built him back up after he dropped that IC title at Mania. I don't necessarily think he should have lost it the way he did. I think it would have been better to do it in a gimmick match then, so he remains not pinned, and then have him like build towards the world title, win the world title, and then when somebody pins him, it's like, oh my fucking god, somebody pinned Gunther. I'm sorry, Daniel. Ilya Dragunov is a great mid card wrestler, and that's part of our topic for tonight. Heroes of the mid card. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I don't think Dragunov is a world champion either. Like full transparency, talented wrestler. He is an IC champ. That's what he has written on him. Not to say he couldn't exceed that expectation, That's where he is at in my mind. He just doesn't have the
The
character
thing,
work to match the
the
ring
thing
presence.
that the thing that people need to recognize, and it's something that's kind of frustrating, is just because you were an NXT champion
It's not.
doesn't make you a WWE champion. There
Yeah.
is a difference.
Yep. There's levels to it, and Ilya is a great talent. It just he's not a guy you can base a company around. He's not a guy you could have out there pushing your brand. And that's also a component of this too, is because the world champion represents the company. Cody is a great salesman of the company. Gunther,
Hmm.
and I think that's part of it too, is and also it kind of speaks volumes with how they booked SmackDown versus Raw. I think they need to go back to having each individual champion on different shows. I think they need to move Gunther to SmackDown. He's been on Raw for a while. Move Cody back over there to
The,
Netflix.
the only issue with moving Gunther to SmackDown at this point is the fact that they just moved Damian Priest over to SmackDown,
I guess that's true.
and we've done that a lot recently. And I think part of the reason that they put Damian over there is to refresh Damian,
Hmm.
because I think
He
we're
got
gonna
the
like we're gonna.
Judgment Day
It really
stuff.
feels like we're going into the next chapter of the Bloodline story, which I do believe is going to be heel Roman Reigns again.
Yeah, I don't know. I have my own thoughts in that regard. Studs, Jacob Batu. I think the next story in the bloodline that's happening is I don't think we're getting heel Roman Reigns back. I think we're going to get a savage version of a tribal chief, one that is far more menacing with Jacob Batu. I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna fuck Roman Reigns up. I think the match he had with Braun Strowman at Saturday Night Main Event, which Saturday Night Main Event was not a good show. The production value was not great. It made the crowd look small and like nobody was there. But that match put Jacob over in a way that Braun's been a monster the entire time, and nobody could stop Jacob. The Samoan Werewolf, him
Well,
beating
no
down
one's no
the
one has
tribal.
ever no one's ever handled Braun like that.
No,
They've never they've protected Braun, you know, well. And what was really cool about it is like it got to the end of that segment, and I remember the first time I watched it. 'Cause I watched it a couple times. Um, I remember thinking, I hope Braun stays away for a few months now. I want Braun to take a vacation, and when Braun comes back, I want Jacob to have gone on a fucking tear, and then I want these two to go back at it.
yeah. Well,
Like,
part part of the issue is Um, we just had Braun face Bronson Reed not too long ago, where they destroyed one another, and Braun's also been out with sicknesses and injuries here and there for the last couple of years. Sorry, Daniel, you'll never convince me Dragunov versus Gunther is good for WWE's main brand at this point.
what's the comment? You're not putting it up on the screen here. I can't read it.
Sorry, I thought I clicked it. It's just not believable. It worked in NXT Europe because it was NXT Europe and they were big dogs there. It worked in
Okay,
NXT
so
because of it's NXT.
here's the thing, Daniel. I'm not trying to take away anything. I'm not trying to take anything away from Ilya Dragunov because I like technical. The first thing that you got to understand about me is I love technical wrestlers. Despite the horrible things that he did, I still can go back and I enjoy watching some of those old Chris Benoit classic technical matches. Owen Hart, Bret Hart. Bret Hart is my personal favorite of all time because he is the excellence of execution. Kurt Angle was one of my favorites to watch because of his execution, his technical ability. And Ilya Dragunov, for his credit, has an amazing amount of technical ability. I love watching Ilya Dragunov matches, and I'm not taking anything away from Ilya Dragunov. However, Here's the problem: Ilya Dragunov lacks the size. Okay, and just being realistic about it, he lacks the size, and he's trying to play this Lionheart babyface. Now, if Ilya Dragunov is a heel,
Then it's different.
that's a totally different story. But as this babyface character that he is playing right now, I agree with Evan. It has a certain, it can only take you so far. And then you need to show that you have a different kind of killer instinct that he has not shown to a main roster audience. And that's part of it too that you're completely forgetting. If you think that NXT, anything that you did on NXT matters to 90% of the mainstream audience, you're mistaken. It doesn't matter unless Michael Cole or or whoever's doing commentary says it matters. Because until that happens, until the that larger viewing audience has been made aware of those accomplishments, guess what? They didn't happen as far as that audience knows, which means they just didn't happen.
Yeah, and Daniel, that's a very contradictory statement because he is a smaller guy. His move it doesn't make his moves more devastating and brutal. It makes him look more devastating and brutal. His moves are still the same, and his move set is like Brian said. He's a babyface, a Lionheart babyface, a never give up kind of babyface. Now, if you bring back Ilya Dragunov is like a German. I don't know if you guys have out there watched Peaky Blinders, a German version of the Peaky Blinders. Tommy, where he's a gangster, and we're not doing like the rip off FBI down in NXT. We do like a legit version of it. Then that we can talk. But like he had Ilya's size lends more credibility to doing a cunning, devious heel than it does to a Lionheart babyface. Not to say an underdog Lionheart babyface can't work. However, it has to be done in a particular way to the particular audience.
Let me give you another example, and I'm going to use a specific name when I bring up this example because I know he wrestles by a different name, but Neville, not Pac. I don't want to talk about Pac right now. I want to talk about Neville. Okay, I want you to think about that change when Neville, because Neville was winning championships as a babyface. Neville was doing well as a babyface, but when he made that turn, he grew a beard, he started getting more devious. That was when he became a threat. That's when he became something to notice. He was worth watching then. Until then, he was filler hour on 205 Live.
Mm-hmm. And it's not a knock on him. He's a great talent. It's just to the larger viewing audience, no one's going to believe that until commentary puts it over, and it's just not at a level where they're going to. And to circle back to what we're talking about, put Jacob Fatu against Ilya Dragunov. You know what's going to happen? Ilya Dragunov is going to go back on the fucking shelf. Like, it's just a fact. And for me, like, I kind of agree with you. I want to see Braun Strowman, maybe take a few weeks off, come back at a later date and revisit this, maybe feud with someone else. But what I really loved is the lead up into the match where Tama Tonga's, hyping up Jacob Fatu. We're not seeing that I love you solo stuff. I still want to hear that I hate you solo shit. I think that will hit so fucking hard. But when Jacob Fatu did a callback to an MLW promo he did with Alex Hammerstone, where he said Godzilla versus King Kong. Hell, you ain't either. I'm Godzilla and King Kong all rolled into one. It's a callback to MLW, highlighting the fact that it's two monsters meeting in the ring, but this monster's gonna whoop your ass. And Jacob Fatu is legit. I think within the next few years he will be a WWE or World Heavyweight Champion.
Yo, absolutely, without question, without question. I would even say, I think a year and a half. I think we give it a year and a half. I think it's a guarantee. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if it happened within the next calendar year.
Yeah.
At all.
He has main event charisma. He's got main event star written all over him. He can cut a promo. I think if he's added he's cut weight. He's bulked up in a muscular way. He's not a Samoan heavyweight like we've seen with Umaga and with Solo necessarily. He's. I see a light bulb that's gone off in your head.
I think I just had like your Joe Hendry John Cena moment from last week, man. I think we just we got the answer to both our problems right here. You know who should take the belt off Gunther? That'd be believable. That would turn him into a baby face.
Jacob Fatu.
Jacob Fatu.
And then you can send Gunther to SmackDown.
No, let the two of them keep going at it, man. That's what I want to see. Big men slapping me.
Big meaty men slapping me. Oh, it's just Vince Kennedy McMahon and his big giant grapefruits. Sorry, guys. That I try not to impersonate Vince anymore, but can't resist it when it comes to
so good.
big sweaty men slapping meats. Call it Big E. See, exactly. Jacob Fatu, the Titan Killer. That's a shitty. That's almost as bad as calling yourself Titan and E-Fed.
Ooh, shots fired. Oliver, I felt that one.
But my whole point here is Jacob Fatu is he's the next superstar in WWE. And they've been really good about building and protecting their superstars. And I think we're also seeing a changing of the guard when it comes to a lot of the talent. It would not shock me if we get Jacob Fatu versus like Omos or Jacob Fatu versus have him like slay some bad motherfuckers.
Is Omos still with WWE? I thought his contract.
Japan or China one.
He was just over there like on a.
He was a tag champ. He surrendered his belt because he had said, "I'm going back to WWE." So
he'll probably right. I did hear that.
But and what I would do is, if you're gonna have Cena win a championship, a world title, have Jacob be the one to take it from him. In his final match, have him retire one of the greatest of all time.
I don't know. I mean, I'm personally personally, and this is just me personally, and we can have this conversation a little more later on, who would like to see John Cena's last match be against. But right now, personally, I'm partial to Randy Orton.
See, I want that to be part of the matches. Him and Orton, him and Punk.
It's kind of like that Sting Flair thing, with how they were the last WCW match or the last Nitro match.
Yeah, no, I definitely.
And yeah, let Batista have a front row seat too. He won't take up much space anymore. He's rail thin, so.
He weighs as much as I do. He's not that thin.
He looks like a cancer patient now, man. He's lost so much weight. It looks scary, man.
Oh,
we're gonna have to put. You know what? We're gonna put this up. We're gonna put some side by sides up on the Standards of Geekness Facebook page with a poll. I want people to go there and I want them to vote. I want you to tell me what you think. Do you think that he doesn't look too bad now, or do you think that he's lost too much weight?
Well, I mean, I think he weighs 240 or 245. At one point he was 370 pounds. He's still 6'3" or 6'4" or whatever, 6'5". He's still tall, but in the interview with Chris Van Vliet, he talked about how he felt like he was way too big for Hollywood and how he was just like, he looked cartoonish in his words.
Tell that to The Rock, man. He looks The Rock Dwayne is twice the size now, at like 50 whatever years old.
Well, when you're off in Hollywood shooting up, never mind. When you're off in Hollywood,
he's twice the size now that he was when he was world champion fighting Stone Cold Steve Austin back in 2001.
He's a boulder. But no, like, anyways, yeah. So, studs, CM Punk, that promo he cut in the crowd. Whew, talking about killing Hulkamania once and for all. Ooh, he not only fired that crowd up, he that was I'm gonna call that the sermon in the crowd.
Well, he must have done a hell of a job because Hulk Hogan did not show up for Saturday night's main event. He said that doesn't work for me, brother.
What you gonna do when CM Punk cuts a promo on you?
Run,
Uh,
go drink your beer.
go drink your piss warm piss water.
So no Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
No Hulk Hogan.
I consider that a win. Fuck Hulk Hogan. This is a
Absolutely.
Hulk Hogan podcast, by the way. Sorry, Whip.
There have also been some news reports that have come out that have said that Netflix, they do not want Hulk Hogan to appear on WWE programming that appears on Netflix.
That makes
Um,
sense. Honestly,
yeah, after what happened on the debut, I wouldn't either.
I didn't think to look to see if the logos for his beer company were still on the mat. I
Well, it'll
didn't
be
pay attention.
interesting to look tonight.
Yeah.
And
And then yeah, Seth versus Drew they had a great match. Sammy getting involved to help Seth, but hurting him, teasing tension. I mean, the character work what these guys are doing. Just Drew McIntyre's on another level. Honestly, they're firing on almost all cylinders. At least at the top level in WWE, it's kind of the opposite problem that they're having in AEW.
mhm.
I guess moving on to the duds. Kofi Kingston. He dropped Rey Mysterio on his head on the mats outside the
That was
ring.
rough. That was pretty rough looking, and it was kind of a disheartening match. If I'm being really honest, because
Yeah,
that was a match that had a lot of build up
yeah.
going into it, and it didn't pay off. It didn't
It
have the
almost
payoff that it didn't. It almost felt like it didn't have a payoff.
yeah. It felt very placeholdery. Part of my problem is it almost felt like Kofi was trying to wrestle a different style than we've seen him do, and that might have worked against someone that didn't outweigh him. But Ray is shorter than him, but outweighs him by a significant amount. Um, I honestly, I'm that's the New Day feels like someone that's lost in the shuffle
Well, I think
after their heel turn.
the tag team division in general in WWE right now, I feel is a little bit
It's always
lost.
been their weak spot. If we're being transparently honest, at least in the last 20 years, the tag team division in WWE has always been their weak spot. Most of that was previously due to Vince, but since Hunter's taken over, I think it's just inconsistent booking and too many moving pieces.
I
You know,
think I think that's more what it is. I think it's the too many moving pieces, and I think what they need to do is I think they need to pick. There's a ton of talent in the back with years of experience. I think you need to pick a couple of those guys with a lot of tag team experience and focus on them. Just in building out the tag team division a little bit better. It's a
yeah,
little bit better over on SmackDown than it is on Raw, but on
I've
Raw
noticed
it's really
that
rough.
SmackDown honestly has been rough to watch the last like month or so. It's been a lot of good solid tag team matches, Motor City Machine Guns, DIY, Pretty Deadly, which is it's really weird to see Pretty Deadly and Motor City Machine Guns, the size difference between the guys. Because Pretty Deadly, those guys aren't they're not the biggest guys, but they're deceptively tall. Um the Motor City Machine Guns, they're guys that are our height. They're I think they're 5'10", 5'9", or a little bit under us. Um, it just makes Pretty Deadly look huge in that instance and like monsters. And they had a solid match, but like it speaks to the problem honestly that I voiced when we on our return episode is SmackDown feels like an afterthought. It feels like they're lacking the star power. I think that's part of why they brought Damian Priest over because Priest he's over with the audience. I think they need to move a couple other stars over. once Randy
Mhm.
comes back, I'd move him over to SmackDown. And I mean, you got KO. If you could keep Cody on one fucking brand, either keep him on Raw or keep him on
Yeah,
SmackDown.
they can't. That's part of the Netflix deal. That's
Well,
not
then
that's not even
figure
their
it out.
fault.
Move the World Championship over to SmackDown. Build a star then.
That's that's what I think is
I
the
felt
long term plan. No, I do. I think that's what the long term plan is to swap um belts between the shows.
Yeah, and which makes sense. It's just uh another dud. Rhea versus Nia. I don't think this is a feud anybody's asked for. We've seen them face off time and time again. It's a rivalry no one asked for. I know I didn't ask for it. Did you ask for it?
No, not really. And while I understand it because I see what you're doing. You're bringing Nia over and you want her to like make a big impact, and she just lost the women's championship to Tiffy. But this isn't the way to go about it because it's just the same old thing. Well, you asked for it, and you're gonna get it. Uh
Yeah, I
it's
understand why they
we've
did it.
se-
I
yeah,
don't think.
we've seen it before, and in the end, because we've seen it, and not just seen it once, we've seen it several times between these two. It just doesn't have
That's
any legs beyond a one-off.
Yeah, and it felt very fillery. Honestly, Saturday Night's main event as a whole felt fillery as a show. Like there was some highs, like the Jacob Fatu versus Braun Strowman, and I
I
think
enjoyed the contract signing.
that was great too, especially with Shawn Michaels. Um, it was really really great, to have CKO be a menace and try to go for the package pile driver on Shawn.
Hmm.
But honestly, the highlight of the Rhea Nia thing was seeing Roxanne Perez in the audience, teasing bringing her up to the main roster for the Rumble. That would be a great opponent for Rhea Ripley because you could have Rhea drop the belt to her and make Roxanne a chicken shit heel.
One thing that I wanted to bring up about the contract signing segment that I thought was really interesting. Um, so if you go back and watch, KO grabs Sean for the package pile driver, and Cody actually gives him a super kick.
Hmm.
Like that's what stuns KO backwards and lets go of Sean, and then Sean tunes up the band and gives some sweet chin music. Sweet ch- the the super kick from Cody was enough to stun KO. The sweet chin music put KO on the fucking ground,
And he stayed
and
there.
it made yeah, and he stayed there, and it really made me happy because it really emphasized to me the difference between just like these average guys doing this super kick,
And
your
sweet
average super
chin
kick,
music.
and the sweet chin music, the super kick, like where Sean has perfected this,
Hmm.
almost like that. I can touch you in four different places and your heart explodes, kind of thing. It's like
Oh,
that kind of precision.
yeah. I mean, well, Jake the Snake did an interview recently. I believe it was either with Chris Van Vliet or with uh, RJ City, where he was asked, I believe it was Chris Van Vliet, he was asked about people doing the DDT and if he would, if it bothered him that it became kind of a regular move. And he said no, because when they do it, they get up. But when I did it, they didn't get up. And I think that right there is how it should be done. If you're going to use other people's finishers as a regular move, then yeah, you need to kick out of it, but maybe sell it a little bit, not just.
Like you don't want. Well, I understand the concept of not wanting to make another person's finisher look cheap. You
Hmm.
know, um, but I do think that there should be a level of precision to it
Hmm.
for some of these guys over time. Like, you know, you see Seth Rollins or Cody Rhodes do the pedigree,
Hmm.
and I'm sorry, like
They do really
it's
shitty pedigrees.
never, yeah, it's never looked like a Triple H pedigree.
Yeah.
It looks more like you know who it looks like? It looks more like a Stevie Ray pedigree,
Yep.
and that was just crap.
Well, so I'm gonna be fully honest, and I hated this movie the entire time he's used it. I fucking hate the Cody Cutter. Just saying it. I fucking hate it. I think it is just an RKO with extra steps. It is a diamond cutter with extra steps. It is unnecessary as shit. Come up with a better signature move. I'm sorry, it's lazy.
Well, I think the real point for me is that, like, if we're gonna go by this whole emphasis, Cody can hit a super kick, but it's not sweet chin music. Cody can hit a cutter, but it's not an RKO. It's not a diamond cutter. It's not going to put you down for the 3 because he doesn't have that precision and that skill with those moves. At the same time, dude, do you really need to give 3 crossroads in a row to your opponents to sell the move? Like, at the point you got to give 3 in a row. I got to drop my opponent on his head 3 times in a row. You're damn right he should be unconscious.
To quote the big dog,
come on,
get a better finisher.
Yeah. I think
I understood it at Mania because of what they were telling in the story with Roman Reigns and it being Roman Reigns, needing 3 to put him down. That makes sense. But I've noticed it happen more and more again. No, please stop. I'd rather have somebody wiggle their way out of it than you hit it and they kick out. You hit it and they kick out. You hit it and they kick out. Or you hit it, and then it took 3 to pin.
I would feel a lot better if we could utilize ring positioning more. Like, I think it really says something when you have these veterans who have been in the ring, and they just took this big ass move. They don't have strength to kick another wrestler off of their body, but they can grab that rope. They can put the foot on the rope. And that to me is a great storytelling tool. And
I absolutely agree.
And like if you hit me with your finish, right? And and then you fall on top of me, you're exhausted, I'm exhausted, you don't grab that leg. And I'm able to, and therefore I'm able to put it. It gives that extra level of drama. Now, he hits that move again.
He's gonna
now he hooks the leg. And it means more. And I think that's something that's being lost or underutilized at the very least on all sides.
Yeah, and I'm just and then my final dud for WWE of the week outside of Saturday Night Main Event just being a shit show. Pure Fusion Collective and Damage Control. They've been running this feud since early last year. Stop. You've got Dakota Kai now out. Dude, she's I think in concussion protocol due to a terror. Everybody was praising it, but I'm just sitting there looking at the impact. That springboard dropkick was messy as shit that Zoe Stark hit. No wonder she ended up in concussion protocol. There was no way she could protect herself. She took 2 feet to the fucking face. And it kind of summarizes this entire feud. It's just a shit show match after shit show match. I watched them live and they have somewhat good chemistry to a degree, but it feels very forced. I would move Pure Fusion Collective over to SmackDown. I would rename them, help them get better here, have them build stories with someone else. Damage Control, same thing. When it was Bayley, Asuka, Io, and Kari, it made sense. Now it just feels like placeholder. And they're not believable or at this point.
I almost
bring up some NXT talent and wrestle.
I feel like it's almost the ship of Theseus thing. Like, how many pieces of the ship can you replace, and it's still the ship? You
Hmm.
know,
Yep.
this is like NWO 2000. It just doesn't work for me. It's not the same group anymore. Um, let's move on.
Fuck. So AEW studs and duds. So funny enough, my first stud is actually something that we've kind of had a little bit of back and forth about. We both agree that the timing could have been a little better and done a little differently. I'm excited to tell though, my gal, one of my favorite wrestlers in the world, Timeless Tony Storm, is back. I do agree that it should have, in my opinion, been done at the pay per view, or at the very least, the beating that she took should have been what shook her, back, and maybe they'll on the next show talk about that for Grand Slam and whatnot. But I think it was overall, she's their biggest star in the women's division outside of Mercedes Moné. Honestly, I think she's got the potential to be a bigger star than Mercedes Moné. Hell, she's in the upcoming Mildred Burke biopic that Jim Cornette's also in, and I'm excited to watch that. I think that overall, this feud has been going on for a while. I think that if someone's going to beat Mariah May, it should be Timeless Toni Storm, but I also don't necessarily think that it should happen.
So my issue with it was, if you go back and you watch the whole promo segment, you have, excuse me, Mariah May and Tony Storm in the ring together. Tony Storm is doing her the same shtick that she's been doing. I want to be just like you. You're my hero. All that, and she ends up getting the shit just beaten out of her. Um, Mariah May goes back like 3 or 4 times, just with the whole belt, just strapping her over and over and over again. And
Crazy.
and to me, it should have gone one of two ways. Instead, it went a third. Okay, if you're going to have it be that she has been timeless, she's actually been timeless Tony Storm this whole time, right? Then maybe when she goes back to, give her the belt, because there are plenty of other people in the ring that were trying to separate her, like calm her down. She kept going back, right?
Yeah.
Just give him an extra second to keep her back.
Have
And
her
then when
pop up.
she approaches, Tony Storm catches the belt and takes it right from her. Oh shit!
Hmm. And that's what part
And
of
then
what we
she could have
discussed.
rolled out of the ring, and then she could have stripped down just like she did and gone into the promo. Okay, that's one way to do it. Okay, other way to do it is, she got clocked in the head with the belt
Yeah,
right there at the beginning. And I actually thought it would have been really cool to be she. That was what made her remember
yeah,
who
and
who she is.
it's small little nuances like that that I think AEW struggle with as well. Is details like that matter. They matter to people who are paying attention. Like you and I, your average wrestling fans. You might not necessarily pick up on that, but people that know wrestling and they know the stories and how you tell them and how to build them, we are looking for that. We want to connect the dots. It's like Edge said. Wrestling fans want to be rewarded for remembering. They want to be remembered, or they want to be rewarded for their knowledge and paying attention. I think they blew their wad a little too soon on that. No pun intended.
I think the whole thing should have been just drawn out a little bit more. I don't think she took enough time as just Tony Storm.
Yeah, like it was a
I
fun little
think
piece
that
of paper.
aspect of that time, that if we extend this out another month, I think that the way that the whole story comes together and feels is a lot
More,
more complete.
yeah. Um. So for me, Omega and Osprey, we finally got they're going to be in tag team action at Grand Slam down in Australia. I'm excited to see what they can do as a tag team unit. They're both better singles competitors, in my opinion. What I'm thinking, the reason I'm calling this a stud is because it means that maybe we'll finally see the end of this feud. um,
No, unfortunately, we're definitely not at the end of it yet because the numbers don't match up yet.
gonna need the
You
Bucks
know,
to come back.
we need we have. Unfortunately, I'm thinking that's what it's going to end up being.
Would
It
not shock me.
because it feels like that AEW always going back to the elite, the original creators thing, and I mean it does make some sense at least this time. At least this time, that
Not
story makes sense
well,
to tell.
last time I think they had to do it because of a few injuries. I think that the logical conclusion point for this is the Bucks joining them, and then we get a blood and guts.
Yeah,
That's where I
I
think.
100% agree.
But as long as I can see
And
the end of it in sight, I'm a happy camper because then it means all these talented men and both sides. There's tons of talent all around there. Brian Cage, Lance Archer, Takesha, even Don Callis, Kenny, Osprey, the Bucks. There's so much talent there. We all know they're talented,
mhm.
but there's so much more they could be doing. Um, you know, speaking of,
Well, I think
uh,
it really says a lot when you're taking two talents like Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, and you're putting them into a tag team match together. It, there's a part of it. I remember feeling this way back when they were doing the what did they call themselves? Stone Cold Steve Austin
two
and
man
Triple H,
power.
2-man power trip.
Yep.
That's kind of what this feels like. It feels like you're putting too many of your eggs into one basket, and you're kind of. I almost feel like I'm being forced to eat this dish as opposed to getting treated to it throughout the whole show, or and if I'm going to get these two at the same time, I'd really rather them fight each other. Like, let's be real here. Will
Or
Ospreay and Kenny Omega are two of the best wrestlers on the planet, and every time that they go at it, it's a delight.
yeah, and I mean maybe that's what maybe we'll get that. I don't think it's necessarily in the cards right now, but I mean them versus Okada and their singles matches were great matches too. Speaking of Okada, I love him as a troll. Watching him troll Buddy Matthews this last week and calling him saying he barks like a little bitch was hilarious. Then he just flips off the camera, and it was just he's such a good troll. Uh, So I have mixed feelings on the next stud that I want to highlight. I'm super happy that Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin are now the new AEW Tag Team Champions. First of all,
Well earned, well deserved.
Bobby's finally a tag team champion. He never was in any of the other companies he was in. Um, I'm more happy that this is a turning point for the AEW Tag Team division that doesn't involve the Young Bucks. Um, I feel bad for Private Party because they felt like an absolute joke in this feud. Like they got punked time and time again. They were the plucky underdog baby faces who just couldn't match up. And they sold and they did a good job. Maybe they can get a proper tag run, again. But what have they done since they won the belts? Nothing. Hold
See, I think
some celebrations. Ooh.
I think this is a great opportunity uh, to move forward for AEW with the tag team division because I think there are a lot of companies out there that your tag team division is really your weakest division. Everybody wants to be a single star, um, and to keep two guys together, these two guys, these two guys, these two guys, those big personalities together over a long time can be very difficult. AEW is rich in quality tag teams, if we're just being honest.
Yeah, they just need.
However, it's one of those situations where I feel like all of them at this point need to level up. Like I feel like we've been watching a lot of mid card tag teams, and I'm sorry, but Kai and Ty was never going to win the tag titles. You always knew it was going to be the New Age Outlaws. You know what I'm saying? Like we need. I see you laughing over there.
Oh, I'm trying not to spit my shit out laughing so hard over here. Holy shit. I completely forgot about Kayatai. Holy shit.
You're welcome.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have to go watch the match
Uh,
here.
you know what you know what it really was. I've been watching old Royal Rumbles, and if you go back,
I didn't
there's a
realize that.
pretty classic Kai and Tai moment.
Yeah, I saw a clip. I forget. I think it was on TikTok where apparently Shane McMahon did the English voiceovers for those guys when they would cut their English voiceover promos. That was Shane McMahon the entire time, and I didn't know that.
He's more
Looking
racist
back
than you
on it,
thought.
kind of some racist segments there, but
Sorry, I have Venus memory.
not what I meant. But
And
also,
black
I'm
guy.
not saying it. I don't want to get
You
us
know,
canceled.
okay. Funny but true story. That was actually the first Raw I ever saw the finish of. Like because I would always switch between Raw and Nitro, and that was the first Raw I ever saw the finish of. So the first time I ever saw Raw go off the air, it was with Valby hanging. I went, "What the hell is happening on this other wrestling show?"
Interesting thought. I kind of forgot Leo Rush was in AEW, to be honest. And that's kind of also part of the problem is they're just bloated. I think they need to separate the ROH talent and the AEW talent. Each show needs to have separate rosters. I
It
should
really says a lot. It really says a lot about the AEW like locker room and stuff. When you the Combat Club, the Hurt Syndicate, the help me out here. Like I'm not going to be able to name them all.
the Callis
How many
family.
groups? Callis family. Like there are beyond too many stables in AEW, and then you like then the Elite. Are they? They're together, but they're not together constantly. And there's so many of these. There's frankly
Learning.
too many stables.
Yeah, and it makes it
Learning
less special. It I definitely agree. And like I
House of
said,
Black.
yeah, well, now they're the Hounds of Hell because Malachi Black is rumored to be going back to
Right,
WWE.
right, right. Because right,
Which
but that's the point. Is like keep them straight. I can't keep them straight. AEW has AEW, quite frankly, has stables like other companies have tag teams.
can't disagree at all. Yeah. I'm I'm also at a crossroads with Swerve and Ricochet in terms of studs or duds because I'm not sure whether to mark it as a stud or a dud. They're teasing it along kind of at a weird, slow pace. Um, Swerve's at a high level here. He's been on it. It's just I don't see a way in which Ricochet doesn't need the win here to really kind of put him over believably. If Swerve wins, then it has to be the end of the feud. There's no continuing it at that point. Um, it's kind of like how we encountered that problem with Hangman and Swerve a little bit last year, where it was so intense for so long that they almost let it go too long. It's kind of the opposite problem now.
Yeah, yeah. Um, this is one of those situations where I almost feel like I wish there was a wrench that could be thrown into the mix,
hmm
like to separate them just just a little bit. Like I still want them to be on the fringes, on each other's peripheral. But if there could be something that storyline wise could bump them apart just a little bit, so I could see a develop specifically on Ricochet's side. I want to see a little bit more development of that character outside
Agreed.
of his interactions with Swerve.
Yes, I agree. Honestly, I think at this point, Ricochet needs a heater. I think he needs a heater like a diesel HBK. Someone that
Hmm.
can bump for him. He can look like a menacing, uh, shit. What's the guy from the Psycho? Norman Bates. He can, he's got the scissors. He can look great there. He needs a heater. Kind of like how Big Bill is for Jericho. Can bump for him.
Hmm.
And I actually, I agree with this take that Daniel just posted. I actually do think the learning tree is a great idea. I do think Jericho gets a lot of hate. We've shit on him here a little bit just because the matches have been kind of bad. Um, and well, Chris Jericho, I want to know where you were on January 6th. Um, but in all seriousness, part of the problem is it's all seen on ROH, which is kind of considered an afterthought. The only reason it's really brought back up is because of Jericho, but like Jericho's not the same wrestler he once was. He can't move and bump like he used to. So this makes sense, but it's the pattern he's had in AEW. The inner circle, the fuck, what were they called? Where he was a wizard. Uh,
There's the Jericho Appreciation Society.
that one. Jericho Appreciation Society, now the Learning Tree. At some point, it needs to not just be a stable. It needs to be him and a heater, or just him. In my
Well, and it's
opinion,
it,
he's lost a step too. Like it happens.
it the thing is the learning tree, and we brought it in the really, inner circle, Jericho Appreciation Society, now learning tree. It's the same story,
Each time.
just different players.
Yep.
And
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 it's
the
lazy.
the real giveaway is Jericho at the top of the group. And the thing is Jericho's at a point in his career that, like, if Jericho doesn't need a stable, Jericho can just be Jericho.
Well, hell, he doesn't need to be the top guy in the stable. He could be the voice. He could be the manager.
And as much as I love Chris Jericho and he's one of my all-time favorites, I do think it's time for him to step back.
And he doesn't have to retire completely, in my opinion. He could retire if he wanted to. But I think he needs to start emphasizing the younger guys. And I get that that's his goal with these stories, and it gets them over to a degree, but it doesn't get them over nearly as much as, like having a good match with Chris Jericho or having a good match with so many that it's just Thrawn kill. Sami Zayn can't control his sweat. Well, I think that's part of what's happening there with that. You're not wrong. I'm assuming you're catching up on the show, but yeah, I mean, he doesn't have to be the A player. He can be the B player. Player two. He could be the Luigi. That was an intentional joke for those of you out there who get it. Yeah, I mean, Hangman has been an absolute stud this heel run. Uh, the It was really interesting to watch the facial expression he had when after the match he had with the local talent when Christopher Daniels came out in the neck brace. You could see the look of regret on Hangman's face and the grimace that the click that he brutalized and retired his friend. Like little details like that gets it over even more, and that's good. He did a great job selling there. Daniels did a great job. That was good booking, Tony. Keep it up.
Honestly, Hangman is kind of one of those guys I almost feel bad for being in AEW. Like, I'd really love to see what Hangman Adam Page could do in WWE. I think that with what he's learned on AEW television, I
Mm-hmm.
think he's absorbed. He is a guy who is absorbed and he's taken in and learned a lot more than a lot of the other talent on that roster.
Which is funny because that was the whole thing that led to the things between him and CM Punk. having their issues. So I'm going to give a hot take. Within the next 3 years, Hangman and Adam Page will be in WWE.
And him and CM Punk will be best friends too, man. They're gonna be getting along,
I don't even think it's
laughing
necessarily
at
an
Tony Khan.
AEW closing thing. I don't think it's a AEW hate thing. I think he's going to either get frustrated or things are going to run its course on AEW, and he's going to be like, well, I've done everything I can here.
He pretty much already has. So
Yeah, which is.
I think that's part of the issue too. Is like, I feel that way about Mox, to be honest. Like,
He'll end
it's
up
not
back
that
in
I don't.
WWE too.
It's not that I don't think Mox is a talented wrestler. I think he's a very talented individual. I just think
I
that
the stories.
everything that everything that he can do as that character in AEW, he has done, and he's
Yeah,
done it to
he's
fucking
been their
death.
Superman for so long, and like it's interesting to see him in a heel role again. But we've seen it. We've seen him as world champion. I'm kind of tired of Jon Moxley as AEW world champion. I get there's been reasons why he had to be in the past.
Mhm.
That said, I personally cannot wait until this Ku Klux Combat Club bullshit is done. Um, Claudio has been actually looking very menacing on TV lately.
Claudio's been looking great. Claudio's been
I
looking
I
maybe
actually
the best he's ever looked.
I actually would like to see Claudio as the top guy.
Me too. Me too. I would even take Claudio as the top guy in the company.
Yeah, I think
Like,
you could.
not just Combat Club, but the company.
Yeah, hell, put him with like not a put him with Don Callis. Just him and Don Callis. You could have an amazing heel run. Claudio can talk a little bit, but put him with Don Callis, someone that can get him some heat. Not the Callis family.
And I'm and then just sit there and send out banger after banger. Claudio versus Okada, Claudio versus
Osprey.
Omega, Claudio versus Osprey, Claudio versus Joe. There's plenty. Just
Yeah, I
feed them one
mean,
after another.
you're not wrong. It was interesting to see them tease MJF and Hangman. Potential feud maybe where we'll get Hangman back as the babyface down the line. I was intrigued with this Jeff Jarrett stuff to begin with, but that is slowly worn off for me.
It's worn off real quick for me.
Yeah, I was intrigued, but like last week's shows, I went back and rewatched them again, and honestly, it was kind of awkward. Their interactions were just the forced.
The the promo style between the two doesn't blend well. That's
Mm-mm.
the issue.
Yeah,
Jarrett Jarrett has, he's from the land of scripted promos. MJF is from the land of cut it all from the cuff. And when you're trying to put those two together, they don't work. You
no,
can't have one guy with, going, okay, this is what I'm going to say next. And he's waiting for a cue. And so then you got the other guy who's like, all right, I'm going to say all this shit just to lead up to this cue to give to, and it falls apart. It doesn't. And that's why I think that the MJF stuff felt awkward.
well, it was just then it was just talking about the stuff with Karen Jarrett, like bringing that all up again, and like and shout out to Kurt Angle. He voiced his feelings on the Perk Angle memes, and I'm glad we as a community have come together to retire that, to honor Kurt the way he should be. And we've all had a chuckle and a good laugh about it, and Kurt was a good sport about it for so long. But to see the pain in his face when talking about it, I think it was really heartwarming to see the social media groups and people just collectively agreeing. Instead of Perk Angle, let's name it Peak Angle or like Total Nonstop Action Angle, stuff like that.
You, what I loved, I don't know if you watched that whole interview that he did with Chris Van Vliet,
Almost
but
finished it, and I was watching it before we were recording.
there was a point in there where Chris Van Vliet asked him, what did you think when the first time that you heard the fans chanting that you suck? And Kurt was like, I thought I sucked. I thought it was horrible. It made me laugh so hard.
Yeah, well, it's
Kurt
because he
Angle
came
is a
like
genuine treasure, man.
yeah, Kurt Angle. He's honestly one of my favorites of all time. Um, just he could do comedy, he could do serious, he could do technical wrestling. You know, Milkomania, honestly, that lives in my head almost more than the Austin beer truck.
Hmm.
Because it's like
Oh yeah.
even ridiculous.
Man, he
Uh,
was great.
so I'm gonna this next one. I don't know what your opinion is on her, Harley Cameron. At this point, they need to do something with her in AEW. Um, she has the total package. She's got the look. She can sing. She's got comedy. She does an interesting like she's doing this whole Feel the Wrath song kind of it's kind of a weird gimmick and that's kind of been her thing is like niche weird gimmick character gimmick stuff. But like at this point they're having her wrestle decent matches. She hasn't won anything on TV. She had a segment with Mercedes Moné backstage and that's a feud I could believe. But Harley needs to win some matches, which is weird for a company who said wins should matter but like you keep booking her in random title matches or non-titles.
So I think with her and like you brought her up to me. I don't know if it was last week or just in private conversation. Um, and I've been thinking about that, and there was the segment with Mercedes Monet, what I think would really interesting, and maybe I'm being a little, taken in by the recent Tony Storm angle, but I think Mercedes Monet should take her under her wing. Like Mercedes, and I specifically am using Mercedes here because there's always like this interesting dynamic that you want to do here, where you have like the one that's like seemingly on top, but this one is really the one using this one. This one thinks they're using this one. This one's actually the one using this one. And I think this would be a really good time to call up Uncle Snoop and to bring him into the angle too. Because if you know, Snoop Dogg is is Sasha Banks' real life uncle.
I thought it was a cousin.
Um,
There's a familial connection. We will
yes,
verify
there's
that
a
later.
familiar connection. Okay, so I think this would be a really good time to so it gives this appearance that like Mercedes is going to use her to like climb to the top and just dominate, but on the other side,
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
I'm sorry, not sorry. Go fuck yourself. I'm allowed to have whatever opinion I want. This is my show.
He's not wrong. I like where you're going with this. You actually caused me to have a light bulb moment. Um, we do that, but we go all the way. Have Mercedes Monet create a female version of Evolution.
Ooh, that could be hype.
You could have Harley Cameron be the Orton, the young talent. You could have Mercedes Monet be the Triple H. You could have Serena D be the Ric Flair. And then Megan Bain as the Batista.
Oh my god! Wait, I know that she's been being kept off of television a lot, but she's still under contract. What if Britt Baker was the Flair?
I'm not against it. I, I
You're
mean, the whole
because you
situation is
need because she's the name. She has the
yeah.
name that you need.
Instead of Deeb, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because that's the whole thing is like when you had Evolution, Flair and Triple H were both already big established stars,
Yeah,
and
definitely agree.
you need some pillars of full established stars there. But it's
Well,
kind of funny because we were talking about how AEW has like an oversaturation of stables,
they don't
and
have
here
a
we are
female.
talking about they don't have a female stable exactly.
See, see, Tony, call us. We'll fix your fucking show. You pay us a handsome sum. We'll come. We'll fix it top to bottom. We'll get the ship righted. We're gonna have to let some people go, but it's okay. We'll help you. We'll make you money. We'll make money. Everybody will be happy. Say it with me.
Everybody makes money.
Standards
You
of
fuck 'em.
Geeks. But I mean, yeah, Camille. That the angle with Camille was rather weird. I kind of believe. I kind of wonder if that was ran due to like some other medical issue or something else. I've seen Camille post on social. Um, there could be a number of reasons as to why she was written off. Yeah, it's kind of like you and HKW, Daniel. Everybody makes money except you. Never drew a dime, Danny.
Ouch. Brutal. Let's talk
Uh,
about some other.
yeah, I mean, honestly, the rest of the shows, it was kind of like a B minus, B plus for AEW in general. Solid. The Dollar Store Bloodline thing was really hilarious to me. Like, I get they were trying to pay homage to Pacific Islander culture, but the presentation just made me think it was like Bloodline at home. When you ask your mom if we can
Yeah,
have Bloodline chicken,
Bloodline Light.
we have Bloodline at
It
home.
was, and it seemed like blatantly trying to capitalize off of the success of the Bloodline,
Which I don't fault
like
them.
just shamelessly.
I don't fault them for trying. I fault them for it being so goddamn shamelessly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think AEW's got some momentum going. I think they need to course correct on a lot of things. I wasn't joking, Tony. Call us. Topic of the week.
we can do
So
fucking better.
you came, yeah, do fucking better by hiring us. Um, Topic of the week. Yeah, so Brian came to me earlier this week because we were kind of wondering what we should do for topic of the week this week. We wanted to do something a little bit different, other than just tearing down AEW or shitting on what we can, and praising what we can. Heroes of the mid card. So we invite you guys out there in the comments. Tell us your 5 favorite wrestlers that have they're mid card guys. They've never won a world. Here's the rules. They've never won a world title in WWE or WCW. Brian's got 5. I've got 5, and we invite you in the comments to come with yours, and we can talk about it. You want me to go first since you posed the challenge?
You can go first. You can go first. Absolutely. I'm interested to see if there's any crossover between our two lists because
I'm
there
pretty
are
sure there's
so
one.
many of these guys. Actually,
I'm pretty sure that I believe there will be one no matter what. But my first one, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. Now,
excellent
Kurt
choice.
was a
Excellent
former
choice.
AWA World Heavyweight Champion in the 80s. That doesn't count in the rules. AWA was a territory, was eventually driven out of business by Vince. But you look back at Kurt's career, and he defined the mid card. His matches with Brett, with Hulk, with Savage, his matches in WCW. Hell, his match with Brock Lesnar. The dude was so fucking crisp. You might as well call him an apple. Like that was on purpose, but I mean,
Yeah, no,
just
I caught that. I caught that.
like every time I watch a Kurt Hennig match, it's so seamless. He never had a bad fucking match, and like for all his faults, and Kurt died at a very young age too. I believe he was in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. I have to double check the facts on that. Um, his runs in TNA were a little awkward, but even his matches in TNA were solid. Um, Kurt he was a class act in terms of a ring performer and a mid card guy, and he was Mr. Essential mid card.
I think the real takeaway for how good Kurt Hennig is when Ric Flair came to WWE. Kurt Hennig was the one they paired him up with for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
They were running around together, and in the end, it was Kurt that sent Flair packing.
Yeah, and
in a loose count match. Yeah,
it makes sense with how they did it, and it worked out for both men. Um, and it's interesting how those little details matter because they called back to that in WCW when Kurt was part of the Four
Hmm.
Horsemen. Like he was part of the NWO. When they were building Goldberg up, Kurt was the mid card guy that he faced. That kind of gave him a little bit more of a. It wasn't just a squawk.
Yeah, that was a bit more of give him some more credibility than he would get from a Hugh Morris or something. Definitely, excellent choice. Okay, well, over to me, and I have to ask you a question, a very serious question, Evan. What about me? What about Raven? Raven was one of my favorite mid carders all through WCW specifically. Um, like I, his time in WWE as a hardcore wrestler, I really think he was underutilized. I think he was underutilized in WCW too. But when I would look out in the fans, I would see the flock sitting there, all led by Raven. You had Perry Saturn, you had Billy Kidman, Van Hammer. They had a presence.
They had an aura.
That yeah, the promos that Raven would cut were so different from the promos that anybody else would cut, dropping down in the corner of the ring, just sitting there and with a low, almost monotone voice. It called back to Jake the Snake in a big way, and I think he was the if you don't have Raven, I don't think you have Diamond Dallas Page. Not in the same way.
I can agree with that. See, the reason I didn't choose Ravens because I guess we should have talked about this a little bit more in details, but with our work schedules, it got a little complicated. Um, See, he won the ECW World Heavyweight Championship a few times, and that
Hmm.
technically was owned by WWE. So I was like, I didn't want to do the
Oh,
technicality thing.
see, I didn't consider that. I don't consider that the same because
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was definitely
I,
not.
I
There's a
definitely,
very big distinction between original ECW and WWECW.
fair. I just want to make sure that because I thought the same thing. I was just like, Raven is a great choice, but I was like, I want to stick to the rules.
So yeah, for that reason, that was why I put him on my list because we had said WWE and WCW. We didn't say ECW. Raven was an ECW champion, and in my opinion, he should have been WCW champion too. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Enough is enough, and it's time somebody does something about it.
Oh my God!
The late,
It's
the
time for a
great Owen
change.
Hart. What else is there to say about Owen Hart? I mean, the dude just had so many good matches, and he was tragically taken away from us at such a young age. And like, I don't know. I think that was also part of what I found awkward about the MJF segment was the bringing up of Owen Hart in a company where there's a tournament literally named the Owen. But Owen's matches, he was the epitome of wrestling. Like, I kind of, I liked Brett, but I always wanted Owen to win the world championship, and I honestly felt like he should have beat Brett for the world title. I think the story was
Hmm.
there. I know they did a house show where he won it, but like it didn't actually count. It's kind of a classic, early '90s WWE thing, WWF, and tragically just taken so young. And his matches, I mean, his time as part of the Nation of Domination, his time as a tag team champ with Yokozuna, his matches with, I believe he faced Vader in a mid card match, and he made Vader look like $1 million, and Vader was rough as could be with a lot of guys, but like Owen made him look so good, and like, what else is there to say about Owen fucking Hart?
No, Owen was definitely one of the all-time greats, and I think all of us really realized that he was definitely that main event caliber when he had that match with Brett at WrestleMania. He beat Brett, and then Brett went on to win the title in the main event at the end of the night. And I think everybody was kind of going, "All right, now Owen will get
And
his due.
that's what they should have done. Like,
And yeah, he never did, and it's a shame.
well, and
It
I
really
never
is.
understood why they booked that the way they did, because you're gonna have the guy you're having win the title, lose a match earlier on in the night, and it's not like it was like with Seth Rollins where he lost to Randy Orton in a match, but then cashed in. Like, no, Brett
Hmm.
lost the cage match, and then went on to win the title. Make fucking sense.
Yeah, yeah. No. All right, so my next wrestler is actually the wrestler that inspired this list, the one that gave me the idea to even approach you with this list. Órale, arriba la raza. Conan. Conan. Conan rapping in that tequila sunrise. Conan representing the Dirty Dogs with Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman. Conan is a member of the NWO and the Wolf Pack. There was a whole time in WCW that I really felt like Conan was the heart of the mid card in a really big way. And I think that WWF did themselves a major disservice
Letting him
in
go.
trying to Max Moon the shit out of him. I think they missed out.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in the '80s where if you went to Mexico and you watched wrestling, Conan was considered as big as Hulk Hogan was here then. Down there, he was synonymous with lucha, and him losing the mask down there was a big deal. Like, there were people weeping in the streets when he lost the mask. Like, I can definitely respect that. Um, outside of his personal shitty takes on his podcast with Disco Can't Fucking Do Anything Inferno, Conan was a great talent. And he, at least with him, there's credibility. With Disco, I have zero respect for Disco.
Yeah, yeah. No, Disco is always a weird one, and I know that they have a friendship and everything, but it was something that I don't think ever translated to fans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Disco ever had a time where he endeared himself to the audience,
Yeah.
where Conan definitely did. You know,
Yep.
you Conan, you would hear the fans get into the Conan riff when he's on the mic, the same as they would with Scott Hall, the same they would with Road Dogg Jesse James. Like he had that kind of presence,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's essential um, to leading your mid card because you have to have those strong personalities, and I think he was one of those very strong personalities.
Well, might as well. You mentioned him. Hey yo,
Hey yo,
the bad guy, Scott Hall,
see,
aka Razor Ramon. A
is
man.
this the one that you thought would? Is this the one you thought would be on both our lists?
No, I thought Owen would be on both of our lists.
Okay. There's
Scott Hall.
several of these that I specifically didn't pick because I thought you might pick them. Hall being one of them. So
Yeah. I mean, synonymous with ladder matches, the first ever one, synonymous with the Intercontinental Championship, the Click, NWO, literally almost every defining moment during the new generation, Monday Night Nitro, the ratings wars, Scott Hall was involved in it in some capacity. Tragically, we lost him, I believe it was a little over 2 years ago. Um, the dude should have been world champion in WCW. He should have been WWF champion. And I think had he probably stayed in WWF, he probably would have been world champion.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
especially during the new generation, because like Sid Vicious's volleyball games can only last so long. Um, the late the great Sid Vicious.
Oh,
Uh,
I think had he stuck around, it would have. I think he would have been the leader of what became Degeneration X.
I could see that. I mean, maybe, maybe I could see it.
Like
It's just
I definitely think he becomes a main event, like WrestleMania main eventer.
yeah. Well,
If he stays
him
in
versus
WWF.
Diesel, they had a series of matches that were really, really good, and like there was a world where like his feud with 1, 2, 3 Kid was the most entertaining thing on Monday Night Raw.
Hmm.
Hell, he could have paired him up against Yokozuna. Scott Hall wasn't a small man, so like, there's so much potential there, and like, his work with the Outsiders, and like, it was transformative what he was doing, and like, he wasn't just Razor Ramon. He was Scott Hall. He was himself. He was the bad guy, and probably one of the most iconic Hall of Fame um, speeches of all time. And I just, it's sad that two great wrestlers taken very, Scott was at least a little older, but taken too soon. And I just, yeah, I mean, he was synonymous with the mid card. He was a mid card hero. Like Goldberg, that was his. To get to Hogan, he had to beat Scott Hall.
Man, now you got me all somber thinking about Scott Hall. But he really was. When we're talking about mid card, I think one of the things that makes Scott Hall such a hero of the mid card was his willingness to put other talents over. There's, you know, whether you're talking about like the 1-2-3 Kid, or like I know Jericho has told a story about when he was in WCW, and was, Hall was in the ring with him. Hall was scheduled to beat him, and Hall called the audible in the middle of the ring, said, "No, you're going over."
Well,
And Jericho said, "Are you sure?" And Hall's like, "Well, what are they going to do to me?"
no, I mean, yeah, I definitely recall hearing that in an interview. I mean, and it's true. What are they going to do to him? Like, he was pretty important to what they were doing. But like, yeah, I mean, he just he had that. I'll never forget him getting hit with a beer, and he just goes, doesn't even stop his promo. Just he made looking like a bad guy so fucking cool.
Mhm.
And like, the vignettes with Razor Ramon, like, the shots in Opalaka that he was down there in Miami, a very Miami Vice type character. Like, I think we already did a
Well, it's so great
WWE.
that it was all his own idea too. The whole Razor Ramon character was his idea. Okay.
I think we already did that. I'm willing to revisit it at a later date.
So the next guy on my list is actually, I think he's the first one where it's still like an active guy, and I honestly expect him to live the rest of his life in the mid card, and I'm cool with that because in his entire tenure in WWE, he's maintained himself to be one of the most entertaining individuals there. Evan, what's up? R-Truth. R-Truth.
Yeah, I mean, he is
With
definitely made a
with by
career.
the way, on this one, I want to go ahead. I want to make sure that I give like an honorable mention on this one to Santino Marella, because I thought about him for the exact same reason. I think that the comedy wrestlers in the undercard are criminally underrepresented and forgotten about, and R-Truth, every time that he gets in the ring, it's or not every time he's on camera, it's gold.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's
That
gonna
stuff with
make you laugh.
Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar to this day, every time I see it, cracks me up. Him, like we mentioned last week about Royal Rumble moments. He was one of my Royal Rumble moments where he went under the ring, grabbed a ladder, climbed in the Royal Rumble ring, and
Yep.
for the Money in the Bank briefcase. And like, there's so much the 24/7 championship, which was a shitty looking championship. It was like an attempt at trying to bring back the hardcore division. He made gold with that, and like, he's a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He won it twice, and yeah, I can respect the hell out of that. And I'm kind of mad that I didn't put him on my list.
Well, to be fair, I figured you were gonna have Mr. Perfect, and I figured you were gonna have Scott Hall, so I didn't put them on my list. I did not include Owen Hart on my list. I will admit that. I'm kind of ashamed. He's a main eventer to me, brother. He'll always be a main
That's
eventer to me.
fair. But the criteria was never won a
I
champion.
know, I know, I know, I know.
Well, my next one, he at least made a DDT mean something. Jake the Snake Roberts.
We did have one of the same ones on our list. Well, I'll be damned.
Looks like Daniel had the same thing too. His was William Regal, Cesaro, Jake the Snake, Owen Hart, and Ted DiBiase. I had two of them.
Technically, hold on. I'm gonna hold you, Daniel. Ted
Ted DiBiase.
DiBiase technically was a world champion. Not
He's not
it
officially
was sneaky
recognized.
backhand.
He's not officially recognized as an official world heavyweight champion.
I don't know. He in terms of us coming up with this list, I wouldn't have thought of Ted DiBiase because I
I
think of
didn't
him as a
either.
former
It's because, like,
world champion.
to me, he was the main event. You know, he was Hogan's antithesis during that time. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, I guess Andre does count as a champion. He did beat Hogan and then hand him the title, but that was Andre's.
Andre was champ. Andre won
Yeah,
the title.
yeah. But yeah, Jake the Snake. I mean, his matches with Hogan, and I feel like Jake never got a fair shake when it came to an opportunity with against Hogan. There was a point where, and I vividly remember going back and watching this, where the crowd was chanting Jake's name while Jake was the heel because they were turning on Hogan at that point. I think it was like 90, 91. Um, Jake should have been world heavyweight champion. He should have beat Hulk Hogan long into that 4 year reign where he was like champ for 4 years and like
I think some of the cool stuff about Jake, you know, you talk about Jake with Hogan, but the truth is
Jake with Macho
Jake,
Man.
in my mind, is more influential for the creation of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Definitely agree. And I mean, his feud with Undertaker, Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, like
Hmm.
every single guy who became the guy wrestled Jake. They had to go through Jake. And
Yeah, he was definitely a standard bearer of that generation, um and one of the best promos to this day. Like you
his
can go back and watch Jake the Snake promo now, and it holds up.
well, his delivery is just he was silent and deadly, eloquent and violent, menacing without having to like. He could maintain the same tone, and you'd still the threat would be the same. He wouldn't have to yell. He would be cold, calm, collective. He is like he was the snake before the rattlesnake, if you will. You know, his promos, yeah, timeless. Honestly, if you're an up and coming indie wrestler, go and watch Jake's promos if you already haven't. Learn from him. Learn how to be a heel. It's so much fucking fun.
And I think it's cool too because he with the snake gimmick, it gave some really interesting moments. From the biting of the Macho Man to throwing the snake in the middle of the ring so Yokozuna eliminates himself from the Royal Rumble when nobody else can eliminate him. I mean, there's a wide variety of things that he did, and what we got here?
Jake or the American Dream. How can we forget it? It's not like, well, technically, Dusty did win the WCW World Championship by beating Big Man
Hmm.
Vader in '92.
That's
I
correct,
looked
and
into
that's
this.
why that's why he's not on this list. Don't think that like we didn't do our homework on some of these because what I don't know if you realize is no one's gonna razz the two of us harder than we are. If Evan gets one of these wrong, he knows that he's going to hear about it for the next month from me, and vice versa. So we're being kind of stingy on some of these. Um, so yeah, I think that's why we both came up with like the same answer on the American Dream. Why we came up with kind of the same answer on the $1 Million Man. Evan kind of mentioned what I said about Raven. Well, there was the little like kind of question mark about ECW, and There is a reason why I made the choice I made. But anyway, all right, we've got well,
One
that's
each left.
four. I've got one left, and I've saved this one for the end. I've brought his name up once already. Um, and I have a whole bunch of honorable mentions I could give, like just real quick. Gold Dust almost made my list. Bob Holly, I think, deserved to make this list. Doink the Clown, I almost brought up for this list because one of the most just absolutely unique characters. But the last one I wanted to say was just for this. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, D-Generation X proudly brings to you its 2002 Tag Team Champions of the World, the Road Dog Jesse James. I got it out. I did it.
Diamond Dallas Page was like a multi-time world heavyweight champion in WCW.
Multi-time
Like you
WCW
never watched
champion.
WCW.
Multiple-time
I'm losing
WCW
your
champion.
ability to comment for a little bit on that.
As a matter of fact, Daniel, your homework now is to go and watch Diamond Dallas Page versus Bill Goldberg at Halloween Havoc. This was not actually Diamond Dallas Page as the champion, but it's probably the best championship match he had. If you want to see him, actually, I'm sure you know that David Arquette was the WCW champion. He technically won it from DDP. Technically.
Well, and before he was world heavyweight champion, I mean, his match with Macho Man that made him, where Macho put him over. Like, Dan, put in your homework. If you want to be the wrestling Mark, how about you come to the table with some fucking knowledge? Do fucking better.
Yeah, man.
You're sentenced to watching. We're gonna come up with a list. We're gonna post it in the group. We're gonna tag you in it, and we're gonna have you summarize the match. You're gonna have to watch them, or there'll be consequences.
I'm gonna force you to go back and watch some 2002 era WCW Nitro.
We will not be doing that. Nobody deserves that.
All right. Well, Evan, you got one more. You got one more for us.
So yeah,
and I saw it popped up on the screen.
Such a manly man. The man filled with villainous venom. William Regal, Sir William Regal, the king.
With a spot of teeth.
Yeah, William Regal, honestly, like, my first time ever watching him was actually when he was in WCW, him with, who is now known as Triple H, John Paul Levesque, their tag team run, their singles runs, his work, his match with Bill Goldberg, where he humiliated Bill Goldberg and got himself fired, his matches in WWE, he won the King of the Ring. I think, honestly, had he not had the health and drug issues, he probably might have eventually been WWE champion. His mini feud when he was GM with Triple H during the Eugene arc was really, really intriguing, and probably his best promo work he's ever done. Excuse me.
I absolutely loved his run as the European champion.
Yeah,
he might have been my favorite European champion, and that's really saying something because there are some fun ones.
So, fun fact: when we came up with the idea for the Branberry rules in HKW, my inspiration when I was doing that was I was picturing Daniel's character as Regal doing this.
Mm-hmm.
It could have definitely gotten more over than it did, but his influence. There's so much. His time as NXT GM where he would just come out and shout war games. His time in AEW, however brief. I mean, there's so much. William Regal's fingerprints
his stint with the Blackpool Combat Club, I do think really says something about his ability because Not it says something about his ability to talk, and it also says something about his ability just to be a badass. Because he was walking around with those guys, and at that point, when they were that era of the Combat Club,
Hmm.
it really he he was the voice of violence, man. Like
Hmm.
he was good pick, Evan.
Yeah.
Excellent pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a great challenge. I'd like to honestly see what other people in the comments this week let us know what you guys, your top five heroes of the mid card. We just, ask you abide by the same rules. We'll fact check, when we can. We won't make you watch horrible, horrible things like we will to Daniel. Which at this point, Daniel, you're kind of our intern, so.
No, I think Daniel does need to go back and watch some classic some old WCW, even if it was under the Vince Russo era, just so he can watch a DDP match. Daniel, go find the Three Stages of Hell match from WCW.
Yeah, I think as a matter
That
of
that's
fact, let's Brian, let's each pick two matches from any time in WCW from 1990 until they closed. So we give them a time frame where there's some good, the bad, and the ugly. To any two matches, we each choose two. Daniel has to go back, watch them, and then summarize them and tell us what he thinks. Hey,
okay.
Dan, tell you what, if you can do this, we will officially anoint you the wrestling mark.
Ooh,
Maybe one day
the
you can
mark
earn
of
a HKW
the mark
championship.
of geeks. The
Lock
mark
it.
of geeks.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. As always, you guys know the drill. Make sure you go to enforce2.com, enter the code SOG25. We contacted our rep and got the right discount code for 25% off. It will make you HARD.
Hope you guys have a great week. Hope you enjoy the Royal Rumble this Saturday, and we hope that your picks and your favorite surprise entrants all show up. We'll see you next Monday. Good night, everybody.
Good night.